I'm Alex C. with Bird Law Group. Welcome back to another episode of Bird's Eye View. Today we have our guest Alex Northover with us today. Thank you for being on. So first thing I like to do is if you could just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about what you do and Northover Law Group.
Sure, yeah. Thank you so much for having me, Alex.
Of course.
My name is Alex Northover. I'm the owner and managing attorney of Northover Law Group. We are an elite personal injury and workers' compensation law firm here in Buckhead, Atlanta, servicing all of Georgia. We specialize in helping people with complex, challenging cases that a lot of other law firms might tend to turn down. Our law firm is structured quite differently. We put a lot of effort into our cases to get the max level of compensation for our clients. It's really rewarding work.
Yeah, I love the way you put that. We take cases, complex cases that other law firms might turn down. What are some examples of you taking those, what I'm going to call challenging cases, or sometimes just the reject cases from other firms, right? Taking those and turning those into opportunities. What are some of the ways you've been able to do that?
Sure. So it was just kind of a strategy when I launched my law firm, and we are still a new law firm. We launched in January of 2021, so we're coming up on our 4-year anniversary now.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you so much. It's been a roller coaster.
Yeah.
Great experience. But I saw a real opportunity when starting my firm. I kind of had a Shark Tank moment where I looked at the market and saw, what voids could be filled, what holes there were, what problems could be solved, and I saw a real opportunity with these cases that are being turned down. And these are oftentimes clear liability accidents. And what I mean by that is like a rear end collision. That person that got rear-ended is entitled to compensation. Mm-hmm. But oftentimes there's some kind of causation wrinkle, right? Like there would be a delay in getting medical treatment, or there was minor property damage. And those two fact patterns kind of get at an issue of proving that the injuries alleged are causally related to this collision.
Right.
Saw a real opportunity to take on these types of cases, and it just blew my mind to see law firms spending $1 million a month on marketing, advertising through billboards, radio, TV, commercials. And then turning down these cases when each lead is costing that firm approximately $2,500 each.
Wow.
It was shocking to me. And I think the whole law firm structure, big personal injury firms are messed up because they're spending so much money on marketing, and that leaves less money to spend on acquiring the very best legal talent. So we kind of flip that model on its head. The only marketing we really do is legal excellence. I've hired some of the best lawyers, the smartest people I've ever met. And I think I'm one of the highest paying law firms in Metro Atlanta for associate attorneys. One of my lawyers actually made $230,000 in the last 4 months working at my firm.
Wow.
For himself. All my attorneys have quadrupled their incomes from their previous jobs.
Right. I mean, I think that's really interesting that you took that billboard advertising sort of model of a lot of PI firms. I mean, that's what a lot of them do. And that's, I think, when you step out and start your own law firm, you're like, well, shit, I haven't made it until I have a billboard or a commercial or something, right? And you've been able to take that and flip it into, I mean, from everything I've seen and heard, immense success in the last 4 years. I think that is really admirable, and taking the cases that other firms don't take, which when you're paying that much to get a lead, it just kind of perplexes me that you wouldn't take a case that had clear liability, right?
Yeah.
What are some of the ways that you all have approached cases like that to help recover for your clients? Maybe some of the things that other firms don't want to do, or what do you think that you guys do differently, I guess is a better way to put it.
I think one of the biggest points of differentiation is that we put a lawyer's mind on the case from the onset. When a new case comes to Northover Law Group, it gets handled directly by one of the 5 attorneys in my office from the very beginning.
Right.
So a lawyer is doing the work that is normally done by a case manager, which seems counterintuitive to a lot of the logic that's being taught at, attorney masterminds and everything. I think there's a movement, a trend towards, using artificial intelligence or offshoring to, virtual assistants. But this category of case, I think, is only viable when you put the very smartest attorney on it, which is also kind of counterintuitive. But it's because we're able to acquire these leads for little to no cost. Essentially, they're thought of as trash cases, right? So one man's trash is another person's treasure,
right? Exactly. Well, I mean, these people, these clients deserve a voice, right? They've been hurt, they deserve justice. And I think it's really important for people to know that there are firms out there who don't just take the shiniest objects that come through their door, right? They're willing to fight for justice for anybody who deserves it and has a clear liability case for it.
Right. I think one of the issues is that, it comes down to a business dynamic with most law firms. There's always two sides to a case. There's proving liability, but then also proving up damages, right? And a lot of law firms, they need a certain threshold of damages in order to make that case viable for them. And that creates a significant justice gap. A large group of people who have valid legal claims, have rights under the law, but there isn't an attorney who's going to want to pursue those cases.
Right.
And that is really frustrating. There's limited options for consumers, and you're just stuck with going to a huge volume billboard firm, and you're just going to get a call center in India or the Philippines. It's not a personalized approach. So we really wanted to switch it up with a very different structure of our firm, and I think that's what also attracted me to working with your practice as well for referring medical malpractice cases. I think that we align in that way significantly. A lot of the medical malpractice cases that I've come across in the last 4 years, I've clear liability cases, but the damages weren't sufficient for so-and-so big dog to take the case, right? But and I think we agree on this, that a case might be small, but no human being is small.
I think that's a great way to put it. And hearing you talk about your philosophy with PI cases, and you're right, I feel the same way about MedMouse. And some people probably think I'm crazy for that, and that's fine. But there are cases out there that we do reject, don't get me wrong, right? I think we have to, right? Sure. There's things that come through the door that you're like, no matter how hard I would try, I just don't think I could be successful, and I don't want to put the client through that or the firm through that. But yeah, there's several cases, and we talked about this recently, that we have on our case list right now that I know went through 1 or 2 or even more attorneys before they got to me. Including the plastic surgery cases that we've got, because for some reason in the med mal community, there's this just bias against, if you go get plastic surgery, well, you can't be malpracticed on, which I think is it's stupid. I really do, because you're still deserved the standard of care. Just like if you're driving down the road and let's say you have a soft tissue injury, you didn't, break your neck, the other driver still was supposed to follow the rules of the road, right? It doesn't change that. But in any event, yeah, we're very, we think alike in that regard.
And I think one of the issues here within the legal community is that the logic being taught at all these mastermind courses is to treat your law firm like a business. And of course, we are a business, but we're a profession. We're more than just a business. We have a duty to the public, to the community of Georgia, to help further, rule of law, and make things fair, and to hold institutions accountable.
We do. Something that's we've gotten away from, that I think people used to refer to lawyers as counselors, right? And I think that's important to remind ourselves of, as we are there to counsel people who need representation and can't just call up an insurance company and and get justice in the way that a law firm can, especially one that's built a reputation.
Right.
So one thing that I ask every guest on the Bird's Eye View about is there anything or anyone that you would like to give the bird to?
Oof, all right. Maybe I'll get in trouble for this, but I have one. I'd say I want to give the bird to venture capitalist money in personal injury.
Ooh, okay. All right. Flesh that out for me a little bit.
You know, maybe this is something I'm just becoming privy to, or maybe I believe it's a trend more in this direction to see outside investors, VC funds coming into personal injury and funding either medical providers or funding companies or being kind of the quote unquote silent partner at a law firm.
I don't like that. I don't like the sound of that. You know what I mean? Like it sounds like a lack of transparency.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I think this also coincides with the advent of non-attorneys owning law firms, right?
Right. I thought that was a no-no.
Arizona recently, passed a law allowing non-attorney ownership of law firms.
Oh, great. Here comes like Jeff Bezos' law.
Right.
Like, I don't think that's what anybody needs.
Exactly. I feel the same way. Is what's going to happen if this is a widespread trend? I think it's going to be exactly that. It's going to be Amazon law. It's going to be Walmart legal services.
Right.
And could a firm even like Morgan & Morgan compete with Jeff Bezos? Absolutely not.
No, that's terrible. I know. I would like to think that I can, and I will hold on as long as I can. Right. But I mean, come on, y'all. Do you really want Prime Day representation?
Right.
I don't think you want 2-day delivery when you can get somebody who's going to go the full, full track.
I think, the issue is that with any investment group, they're just dollars and cents.
Right.
They don't live in Georgia. They don't know about personal injury. They're not attorneys. They don't care about our community. They care about their bottom line, and that's it. And it's often at the expense of injured people.
Right.
So I'm giving the bird to you.
I mean, I'm gonna have to embrace that. I want to embrace that. I will embrace that, because talk about losing the personal touch of a law firm, right? I mean, there's plenty of our content where I've talked about, I do my best to keep my firm at a size and a attorney to client ratio where every client is a person. You are not a number. I am not a volume practice by any means. Talk about losing that personal connection.
For sure.
I mean, how far from that is it gonna get?
Oh yeah.
You're gonna call in, and as a client, they're not even gonna know who the hell you are.
Right.
It's gonna be worse than your doctor's office.
And with these companies that are not owned by an attorney, they're not subject to the regulations that are imposed on lawyers by the Georgia Bar Association, right?
Gosh.
So they don't have to abide by rules preventing in-person solicitation, sharing fees with a non-lawyer. The list goes on and on. It just opens the door to a lot of problematic things.
Yeah, what a slippery slope.
Yeah.
I have a hard enough time sometimes getting lawyers now to abide by the lawyer's creed.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know if you pulled that thing out recently, but it was at a CLE that I went to, and I sat down and they had it. This was really smart on, I can't remember the law firm that did the CLE. It might have been Shiver Hamilton, but at each person's seat, there was a printout of the lawyer's creed. And I sat down and I read it, and I was like, shit, we get really far away from that sometimes.
Yeah.
It's easy to do. That's just gonna take it to new heights.
Yeah, definitely.
Wow. That was a good one. That might be the best give them the bird. I was pretty stuck on giving the bird to people who make suits that don't put pockets in them for women. Because look, dangling the mic between my legs during a podcast or social media filming is not fun.
Yeah.
It's very awkward. But this might have to take the cake for the new top give them the bird. Because I care about my practice and my profession. And I mean, I care about the reputation of lawyers. And I feel like that's just gonna...
Well, gotta roll with the punches.
Gotta roll with
that's
it.
Why we call it the practice of law. It's always changing, always evolving, and we've got to change and evolve with it.
I just hope there's more people out there like us that want to fight for the way that it is now and having personal relationships with your clients instead of turning this into some sort of big box business, because it's not designed that way.
Right.
What's going to happen when they have to go try a case? I mean,
something crazy I've been seeing recently on my Instagram, I'm getting a lot of automated messages saying, please let us know if you're interested in learning about tort law as a new practice area. We're going to fund your law firm 100% and teach you how to do it. So
Yikes.
This is totally venture capital money, acquiring cases through whatever sketchy means they do, and just setting up with a lawyer who's essentially going to be a rubber stamp.
Right. So let's just find our Esquire.
Yeah.
So we can have one, and we'll teach them how to do tort law, whatever that means.
And then when, shit hits the fan, inevitably, that lawyer is going to be the fall guy, right?
Ooh, yeah, ouch. If I wouldn't have had the real mentors that I did, I can't imagine where I would be now. And it sounds like that's just going to set lawyers up for failure, because you're not going to have the mentorship that I know I had, I'm sure you had in your career. So tell us a little bit about, before January of 2021, kind of how you got to forming Northover Law Group and what you were doing before that.
Sure. So I worked at a big volume firm here in Buckhead, a bigger firm. They're about 15 to 20 attorneys at any given time, and just rose through the ranks. Eventually became the senior associate, supervised all the junior associates. And it was very interesting. I mean, I was able to, look through all of the firm's cases and take cases to appeal in workers' compensation. I was, really the only person doing all of our appellate practice, which was really fascinating for me. I'm a real nerd for the law, and appellate law is pure law. There's
it doesn't get much nerdier, right?
So that was really interesting, and the pay was also very good. I replicated that same pay structure with my firm, but I just saw that I'd come to a point where my firm couldn't teach me anything further, and I was teaching everyone my tricks.
Right.
And I had some friends out there that told me, Alex, if you start your own law firm next year, you're going to make $1 million. And they were 100% right. My first year cleared $1 million in profit, and that was me and 2 paralegals. And I think the trick to having a healthy business and to scaling a business quickly is to not get greedy and take that money. I did not take a single dollar my first 2 years of practicing in Northover Law Group. I reinvested everything back into the firm and just built it up from there. And so now we've got 5 attorneys, 15 paralegals, and we're doing really great.
Wow, you have grown really fast.
Yeah.
What are some of the things you've done to keep your team motivated as you've been growing and sort of cultivate, I guess, team culture, right? Stay glued together, growing so quickly like that.
Sure. So, I really make a point of not keeping my staff in a black box of like, just do this one, open a claim or do medical records requests or, just follow up with the clients. I want them to, have a functional understanding of the process and how their work contributes to the overall outcome. Because this work is incredibly rewarding.
It is.
It is, the transformative power that we have as injury attorneys is really, really awe-inspiring. And, if your staff is just kept in that black box doing that rote task over and over again without that 1,000-foot perspective on how their work is impacting people's lives, then they're not going to be engaged in their work. So a big thing that we do at Northover Law Group is when every client comes to my office to pick up their check, we have an exit interview with them. We bring in, all of the team members that worked on that client matter, and we all get feedback from the client. And normally it's just, oh, thank you so much, and that I think is really what my staff appreciates seeing and knowing how their work plays into these outcomes.
Interesting, because I know that a lot of firms, when they scale and grow, they put everybody in their box, like you said, right? Like you've got somebody that handles medical records and that is your responsibility. But it sounds like does your staff, do they have just a case assignment and they see it through to the end?
So our firm is structured where each attorney has their own pod of a lead paralegal and a legal assistant.
Okay.
And maybe like an administrative assistant.
Yeah.
And the attorney is really directing the workflow of their pod. So I'm kind of recalcitrant to using standard operating procedures and form cookie cutter documents. I think, personal injury is very personal and it's very unique. Each case is a snowflake.
That's true.
And it's got to be treated that way.
Right.
So really, the way I would scale my firm is just acquiring that next great lawyer, and just making sure that our base values align and their work product matches, is up to par with us. And beyond that, I let them, handle cases in their own way. So
Right.
It's kind of a bespoke, custom tailored way to build a case. And we're trying to do that with on a higher volume model.
Right. No, I think that's really interesting to have we see this, or I've seen this trend. We see it in medicine with the medical malpractice cases I do. I think it's also popular in law firms where you use, in medicine, it's practice extenders, right? Physician extenders. And I think to a certain extent, a lot of law firms use attorney extenders. So, they have case managers, they have more staff to make up for not having a bunch of attorneys. But it sounds like you have taken it in a different direction and found success by having each case be truly attorney-led.
Yeah, definitely. And just to see such great legal talent being paid $250,000, $300K a year, that is a good salary, don't get me wrong. Mm-hmm. But with the way I compensate my attorneys, they all make well over $500,000 each.
And that is based on their productivity and the cases that they're able to resolve, right? Or win, for that matter. You guys also go to trial, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah. I don't think there's enough firms out there that actually go to trial or that actually are honest with their clients about whether they would take their case to trial. Right. In some of the cases that you've taken that maybe other people have turned down, have you gotten that question? Will you take my case to trial?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's always a cost-benefit analysis. It's sometimes rolling the dice, but I'm going to leave it up to the client so they can make an informed decision for themselves. And I think that's something that our clients really appreciate. Having an attorney in the case management role is that they're fully informed on their rights, their options, and besides securing the bag for my clients, getting them the max level of compensation, they want understanding, they want peace of mind knowing that there was due diligence on their case file. Right,
it was worked up the right way, right? Not in just some, let's check a box and follow the punch list that I use for every case. Right. I think that's just a really great way to go about it. We're forced to go about it that way in medical malpractice, right? Because like personal injury, medical malpractice is personal, and there is just no possible way to have a cookie cutter for each case. And I think it's really refreshing to hear someone who does workers' compensation and personal injury treating those cases the same way. I think they deserve it.
Definitely.
I think the clients deserve it. And I think from what we've seen in your success, you get better results by doing it, right?
Yeah.
And is that something that was implemented at your prior firm, or is that something that that's something you've developed, you've done in your...
So at my old firm, honestly, I did not have the very best cases. I got a lot of very small, silly cases, and if you didn't learn to turn a small case into a diamond, you'd starve.
Right.
And I didn't really have much oversight there. I was allowed to kind of develop my own strategies, my own way of handling a case, and I had a bunch of outside mentors and applied from strategies I've learned from different attorneys, but because I was kind of working in a vacuum as a young lawyer, I developed strategies that were very different from what anyone else was doing.
Right.
I used to tell everyone how I'd handled these types of cases, and then I learned that this is something very unique, And when I launched my firm, I decided to keep my mouth shut and build a brand around this, and it's really turned out beyond our wildest imagination.
Right,
So,
great for you, great for your attorneys, but even more so, I mean, very beneficial for your clients.
definitely.
So something that I've seen on your social media is a big focus or drive towards networking.
Sure.
And I think that's something that a lot of attorneys, and I'm going to be honest, I've been guilty of this. It's intimidating sometimes, right? Especially when you're just starting to get out there. You go to some lawyer event, there's a shit ton of people there you don't know, and you're like, okay, meet somebody new, this is my goal. What advice would you give to young lawyers trying to get started out there and really sort of build their networking skills? What do you think the best things are to do?
I think the most effective networking is explaining how you can add value to someone else's practice, right? So, when I go to a networking event, when I first went as a young lawyer, it was, an open bar, free food,
Right.
This is awesome.
You're hungry.
And when I then launched my firm, I realized all those connections I made going to open bar networking events for the last 4 or 5 years was really one of the best business assets that I had.
Right.
All those connections. I really believe your network is your net worth. So I think the main thing to focus on as a young lawyer is to go into those events thinking, how can I add value to someone else's practice? And sometimes that means just doing a favor for another professional. Back in, I think, 2017, 2018, when the High-Tech Act was still new,
Right.
That was something that I jumped on very early on, and it really saved my old firm a lot of money in case costs. I mean, tens of thousands of dollars every month.
I know, they really like to jack up those medical records costs.
For sure, for sure.
Yeah.
And so, just something like that, just sharing, a form, a different way that you handle a case, or any type of favor. I know, doing favors for another professional is like its own form of currency, right?
It is. And I think, being open with other people in our world is important, as opposed to there's a mindset of some people that it's all a competition. Everybody's competition. And I think that's just really dangerous and kind of toxic to building a firm. At least it has been for me, to think that way.
I mean, I definitely agree with you, but I think that is a faulty way of thinking. The real competition is us versus State Farm, Allstate, Progressive, and Geico.
Right.
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 I've heard statistics recently that accident attorneys in Georgia are only capturing approximately 10% of claims that exist in Georgia.
Wow.
That's unbelievable. There's so much out there. It's just, billboards, radio, TV, it's limited because it's so saturated.
It is.
There's so many other unique funnels to find cases.
Right.
Just do something different, step out of that comfort zone.
Social media, getting out in your community.
Definitely.
Volunteering, just meeting people organically, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
That statistics kind of blows me away, honestly.
Yeah, so I mean, there's no real competition between lawyers. We all need to help each other.
I think so too. And the enemies or the competition. Competition's a better way to put that. Being the insurance companies, or in my situation, the hospitals, the people who insure, the medical professionals. We have those too. But if we don't band together, their new tactics, whatever the tactic of the day is going to be something that we all have to face individually. And I think that's much more difficult than facing it together. That's one of the reasons I love some of the listservs that we're both a part of, right? I think that sharing successes, even sharing failures, right? If people are so bold to do that, it helps other people in our profession learn and overall help our clients against the real competition, right?
Definitely.
Are there any organizations or associations that you would tell new lawyers to focus on to help their networking?
100% GTLA.
I was hoping you were going to say that. As I'm asking that question, I'm like, please say GTLA, because that's how I feel.
I love GTLA.
Right.
Such a strong organization, keeping the laws in Georgia fair for all injured people. A great network of like-minded individuals that want to help injured people. And as a young lawyer, it was such a valuable resource to have that pool of collective knowledge to draw from.
I agree, and I think that for the most part, I'm sure there's always someone out there in the association who disagrees, but for the most part, it's not competitive. The listservs are a place to share things. The events are a place to meet new people. And I'll say to any new lawyers listening, if you go to a DTLA event, you don't recognize anybody, maybe you'll find one of us. Find the Alexes. We'll make it more comfortable, I promise, because I was there, you were there, right? We know how it feels to walk into a room full of people that you don't know. Well, I really appreciate you being on today. Thank you. It's been great to hear about how you started your firm and the way you approach it. And I wish there were more lawyers like you. I'll say that.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for being here. Please like, subscribe, follow us, and stay tuned for the next episode.